Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of In Lay Terms. I am your host, Payman Ascari. I am joined by two great guests. First, it's Mr. Professor Bruce Pardy. How's it going, Professor?
Pretty good, Payman. Thank you very much for having me.
It's good to see you again, and also a returning guest, Miss Katherine Kowalchuk. How's it going?
Great. Thanks for having me again, Payman. Nice to see you. Hi,
Oh,
Bruce.
it's always a pleasure.
Hello, Catherine. Good to see you.
I always say I'm a really bad host. I always just jump right into the topic. So today's topic, the reason I have you two on, you're two of the people I look to for guidance on what's going on with Alberta independence, and you're two of the very few two people who are making a liberty argument for Alberta independence, not merely an economic, lower taxes, better healthcare argument. I've had you on once before, Catherine, and you made a really good argument for sort of the social, spiritual, cultural issues. So to get things started, and then I'll let you guys go back and forth. Can you sort of shape what you think should be the message for Alberta's future?
Well, I think we're kind of at a crossroads here in Alberta, from what I can tell. We have, notwithstanding this perception nationally and even within Alberta, that we are a freedom-oriented society, and something that other provinces might want to emulate, and Canada in particular as well. But the reality is that we have significant issues here uh, being captured by the progressive left-wing agenda of, I guess, the woke ideology. And I've noticed this for the last couple of years, in fact. And although I'm very much in favor of Alberta becoming an independent nation, uh, I am also very concerned about what kind of independent nation Alberta will become. And not very many people want to talk about what a new Alberta will look like, other than from an economic standpoint. And of course, the economics make a lot of sense for Alberta to separate and become a separate nation. However, we have a host of things that we need to discuss that are impeding true prosperity within Alberta, and those I think would be more easily explained, having to do with the social aspects of our society, and really the morality that underpins our governance structure, which is not being discussed. And so I think what I would like to see an Alberta independent nation look like would be a nation not only robust economically. I would like to see it underpinned by the traditional family values um, that Canada once had, a nation that recognized principles, that recognized the supremacy of God and the rule of law. And I don't see that actually unfolding in the discussion, or I'm not confident that that kind of society will be created in an independent Alberta.
I'll throw it over to you, Professor. You do some follow-up comments, and then I got some questions.
Right. No, I agree. I would put it this way. An awful lot of Albertans say that they want to be free. And thank God for that. That's what gives separation a possibility. But what do they mean? And it's sounding more and more like some of them, especially people who are pushing this independence agenda, sounds like they mean just free from Ottawa. Not free, just free from the federal jurisdiction. And that's not free either. As Catherine alludes to, Alberta has all the things that Canada has that makes Canada a problem. The way I've put it in the past is, yeah, Alberta needs to escape the Canada that is outside Alberta, but it also needs to purge the Canada that is inside Alberta. And to do that, you need to remake your governance inside Alberta. You have to get rid of your Westminster system of government. You have to ditch the Canadian Constitution. You have to get rid of your managerial state. You have a welfare state in Alberta, no less than you have it in the rest of the country. And if the idea is, well, we're just going to get rid of Ottawa, we're going to stand on our own because that will get rid of federal interference in pipelines, and it will get rid of equalization, and it will get rid of single-use plastic regulations. All those things are true, and those things should go. But if that's all we're talking about with respect to independence, I mean, my God, that is such a small thing. If you want to think big, you are thinking of reforming your society so that it works in a way where the people are actually free. And that means the government is not telling them what to do. And that means
You're here.
a different kind of system of governance.
Catherine, I'm just going to go over to you. When this Alberta independence movement started, was it just as sterile as it is now, or did they actually have like a vision for something resembling liberty? I think you told me that they started out swinging, but then they just caved.
Well, I think that there's been just a lot of confusion and hype. I mean, a lot of the people who seem to be pushing the independence agenda would probably identify themselves as freedom-loving, hardworking Albertans who believe in the founding principles that the Canada and Alberta were founded upon. But what I've seen happen is there have been ideas floated around about the new name of Alberta would possibly be the Commonwealth of Alberta. So there's a lot of questions around that. Are there links to the crown, and what does that look like? That haven't been properly explained, and I think it's actually reckless that people are throwing around these ideas, expecting, kind of promising people this sort of vision of Alberta, and then backtracking that statement by saying that we'll have a constitutional kind of conference after the question has been successfully voted on in Alberta. And there's other problems with what's being floated as well, including replicating the same federal programs that are currently in existence in Alberta right now, and the same Alberta social programs that are currently existing right now to remain in Alberta as another carrot to entice people to vote yes on the independence question. And then, of course, you have the promise of increasing the landmass to the Indigenous in Alberta, and statements around preferential treatment for special interest groups. And so these things are being floated around, yet when people like myself or Bruce critique it or push back on those concepts, it's met with vitriol, and the conversation is shut down, and basically folks like us are labeled, or they're saying that we're threatening the independence movement. We're going to destroy it if we talk about these things. But the problem is that we need to have these conversations because they're long overdue. And if we don't actually if we don't create something brand new in Alberta, that is truly freedom-oriented, small government, where we have a society where government is not interfering in the lives of Albertans, we are going to replicate exactly what is happening right now, and we're not going to be better off. And I'll give you some examples of this. What's going to happen? We have a terrific opportunity in a new Alberta to reimagine the criminal code, for instance, which is federal jurisdiction right now. And of course, we've seen in the media many examples, for instance, the Castle Law doctrine, and people being able to defend themselves from intruders is a hot topic right now. the catch and release. We have major bail reform that we can do, and we can do other things within the criminal code that need to actually be completely revamped, that need to be discussed, that isn't on the table right now for discussion, but I think is very important and would address some of the concerns Albertans have in terms of what a new Alberta will look like. We have a small town in Alberta right now where a volunteer football coach for a high school who's been volunteering his time for about a decade got canned because he made a TikTok addressing or speaking out against the transgender issue. So we have that happening in rural Alberta. I'm from a small village of I live in a small village currently of less than 400 people where the citizens are putting land acknowledgements on public pathways and focusing on solar panel projects because the government has these grants, which is our taxpayer funds ultimately, to entice people to buy into this notion that by erecting solar panels on town property, that their electric bill is going to go down, which is just not true. So we have these situations happening in Alberta that I can point to that I'm currently experiencing that demonstrate to me that we have a bigger problem here in Alberta and nobody really wants to talk about it. And instead, these people are pushing people to a party, the United Conservative Party, led by Danielle Smith, who is not a conservative. Her government believes in progressive policy. She's increased the size of government. She believes in deficit spending. Yet we are told that the only way that we are going to get a successful referendum question on the ballot is by ensuring that everybody join the UCP and put pressure on Smith. She's made it very clear to Albertans that she does not support independence, that her job is to diminish support for the question. And recently she's made it clear that it doesn't actually matter what the members of the United Conservative Party put forward in terms of policy. The government is going to do whatever it wants to do. And in fact, that's exactly what this government has done for the last 2 years under her leadership. None of the policies that the UCP have put forward that are freedom oriented, that reject ideas like net zero, etc., they're not being advanced by this Smith government. And so I wonder, I don't like to be a conspiracy theorist, but because we've had so much distrust with our governments to date in Alberta from a lot of people as a result of the COVID debacle that actually hasn't been properly addressed by this government either. We are steering people towards a dead end solution, I think. And I think it's about time that we have this conversation as Albertans to determine what kind of society we actually want to live in. And one more example before I take up all the airspace is that right now, Danielle Smith is facing a lot of pushback by the NDP for this book banning. It's not a book banning. I mean, even though I'm not a fan of Danielle Smith, I can see what she was trying to do by getting pornographic pictures out of our school system. But this is what happens when the so-called right conservatives pander to the progressive left woke mob, is that we have a situation where now they're sucking up all the air, totally mischaracterizing what she's trying to do by getting these horrific pictures out of our school system, and instead it's turning into this political debacle that doesn't actually need to happen, because really children are the victims in this, both the people who identify as a transgender or gay or lesbian, and also the people who don't, or the children that don't. So we have a big mess in Alberta that is not being addressed, and so putting, lipstick on the pig. What's the saying? What do you still have?
Well,
You still have a pig.
let's go to Professor Pardy. I guess if any follow up you want to say, but also, is it asking if we wanted to play devil's advocate, is it asking too much to actually make a liberty argument? Like, Are the
No,
people in Canada a lost cause? Go ahead.
no. Well, I think more and more Canada seems to be a lost cause to me. But here, one of the problems is we are hearing two conflicting messages from a certain constituency on independence. Okay, the first message goes, here are the things that are going to continue, and there's a whole list of them. You know, we're going to continue with a welfare state. We're going to continue with Aboriginal rights. We're going to continue with public health care. We're going to continue with, climate action. We're going to continue with, charter rights. This is the way it's going to be, folks. Don't worry. You'll get your Canadian passport. You'll get your Canadian pension. Everything's going to be the same. Don't worry about it. Just vote in favor of separation. Okay? That's the first message. And the second message is, don't talk about what happens afterwards. We don't want to talk about that because you'll derail the independence movement. Okay? Problem is, those two messages don't line up. If some are going to establish a path, which is what they're doing, they're saying, we're going to honor Aboriginal rights and treaties. We're going to have a managerial state. We're going to have a public welfare. We're going to have public health care. These things are being spoken of as though they're non-negotiable. And then they're saying, oh, but we don't want to talk about any of that. Okay, well, sorry. If you're establishing a path, then we're going to talk about the path because the path is wrong. I could see an approach that said, look, let's just get across the threshold and then we'll all talk together about what happens after that. Okay, that maybe, but that's not what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a path being laid out in documents like from the APP that says in black and white, we're going to give more acreage to indigenous groups. Okay, that's a path. And it's not a path that leads you to the destination that people like Catherine and myself think is necessary in order for this to be worthwhile. So in the past, I've said that this is Alberta's chance, if you like, to save Western civilization. Like Western civilization is in decline. And if Alberta wants to be free, it can, if it has the wherewithal, to establish itself as the example of the way Western civilization is supposed to work. That is not Canada right now. So in order to make yourself that, you have to break away from the Canada that is inside and outside. Okay? That is not the path that's been described right now. And the path that's been described right now is nothing like saving Western civilization or being free or being a new governing system for your independent country. This is more of the same. And frankly, if all you're going to get at the end of the day is Alberta as it is without Ottawa, then this is not worth doing.
And sadly, I agree with Bruce. I mean, I came to be a supporter of separation during COVID, and not having thought about it before, and it was very enticing. But I've learned through my years of being involved in politics in Alberta that, and just witnessing the landscape by and large of the demographic of the people, which is rapidly changing with increased immigration into our province by especially non-Canadians. We have our own little mini crisis brewing here in terms of the ideological divide, and to my surprise, actually, many people who claim to have these freedom-oriented objectives and ideas don't. It's amazing to me how much they're prepared to compromise based on fear, is what I see. It's their fear-based tactic. Oh, well, we can't have another 4 years of the NDP, and so we have to stick with this uniparty system that we have in Alberta, and that is actually very effective, and it was very effective in the last provincial election. I experienced it. But not only that, we have a tremendous, and this isn't a new issue, but a huge apathy problem where people are completely disengaged from the political process and not understanding that it is really important for people to become involved in a participant in their, excuse me, in their political um, affairs, because everything is political from my perspective. And I've come to learn that, having been involved, there's not one issue that we will deal with in our life that doesn't have a political bent to it. And rather than focusing on these programs that seem to actually don't help anybody in the long run, the government, to the extent that it needs to be involved or is involved, should be working on programs that are actually going to benefit Albertans, like promoting policies that promote families staying intact, that encourage people to be participants within the political process. But they don't actually want that because they like the control that they have. They like the corporate cronyism. They like the backroom deals. They like the power, and they like whatever has been promised them on the outside after they're done their little stint in politics. And these politicians walk around with this arrogance that just is sickening to me, that they have all these secrets and they're doing all of these things for the betterment of the citizens. And this isn't just an Alberta problem, this is a Canada-wide problem, probably in all jurisdictions, where we have this class of people that just think that they're above all of us citizens. But they're actually not, they're not creating an environment or solutions to further or better educate and engage Canadians. And so we're at a really interesting time in our history, but this issue is not going to go away. And I can tell you that the current trajectory of the separation movement led by the APP it's going to lose a lot of people like myself, because as Bruce says, like, is it worthwhile? Like, are we going to go through this just to get the exact same crap that we have now? Well, it turns out probably, yeah.
I
And I don't see the benefit of that. I just really don't.
So
I wanna-
what? So go ahead, Pam.
No, I was going to go to you. Go ahead.
Okay, so here's one way to frame this, and there's lots of ways, but one way to frame it is this: that what appears to be on the table now, maybe, is is getting rid of the federal political class and substituting an Alberta political class. In other words, there's still people in charge at the top, but it's a struggle about, which group gets the call to be able to tell the rest of us what to do. And if that's all this is about, as I alluded to before, I mean, the irony is that this separation movement is grassroots. Like, a lot of people, a lot of regular, normal, everyday people in Alberta are sick and tired of the situation that they're in, and good for them. But if all that happens is that you substitute Alberta authority for federal authority, the power held by people closer to you instead of power held by people further away from you, that's no real change. What we are really after is a different way of thinking about how a jurisdiction should be governed. You got to snap the people in Alberta, especially those people who are in positions of authority, snap them out of it. Snap them out of the Canadian way of thinking. And we are a long way from that. Even the people, some of the people who are pushing for separation have not snapped out of that. They are pushing for a replication of what they're trying to escape. And that means, like, it's pointless.
Professor, I just wanted to, I want to jump in and give my own perspective here from like a BC sort of perspective, not Alberta or Ontario. Um, when you were on my show, we did an episode with James Lindsay, and you said you gave your vision for what the Alberta independence should be to
Yes.
make the freest country in the Western world.
Right.
So that's something I can get behind. That's something that can excite me. I'm not gonna, even though I'm in British Columbia, I'm not gonna help the Alberta Prosperity Project if they want, pipelines. I could go live my life. I only got another 40, 50 years to live on this planet anyway.
Right.
In BC, we had a sort of populist party, the BC Conservative Party. They came out and they made a liberty argument, and then when they gained steam, they abandoned it. They just started making economic arguments, and then they just went and joined with the progressives. The whole thing imploded, and now we have another progressive, Dallas Brody. And I don't know if I'm ready to get behind her, but I guess we'll go to you, Catherine, and then Professor Pardy. Like, is there any hope for the Alberta Prosperity Project to actually give a vision, like get leadership? Is there, what's going on in that movement?
Well, I look at it like at first principles. What's our greatest asset? People are our greatest asset. If we have a sick population, if we have a dysfunctional population, we are going to, and people in general, we are going to create the same sick society, the same dysfunctional society. And so this idea that we're going to just focus on oil and gas revenue and royalties and blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, that's fine. But at the end of the day, the people of our province are suffering. I mean, I'm a family law lawyer. I see this every single day. I see families torn apart. I see not only by divorce, but addiction. And a lot of that has to do with this, you know, a lot of this has to do because we've become this secularized society where the focus on me as an individual or you as an individual gains the primary importance over a more holistic viewpoint of things. I mean, it's like humanism. It's a religion of secularism. It's a religion of a service to self rather than that of the community. And this is a conversation that we need to have. Now, I'm not saying that you have to believe like I do that Jesus Christ is our savior, but we have to recognize the morality and that undergirds how society functions. And right now, we can't agree on that as a collective. We can't agree on that as a society in terms of what is right and what is wrong. And until we fix those things, we're going to continue to have a population that is not well. And the divide has gone way beyond left and right. The divide is in absolutely every aspect of our lives, including whatever, like gender, sex, vaccine, no vaccine, all of this stuff. I mean, it's a polarized society that we live in. And so I don't see, I don't know what's going to happen with the APP question. I would be surprised if it survives the court application that is before Justice Feasby right now in the Court of King's Bench in its current format. And there have been a lot of analysis by other people that I agree with about what's happening with that question. So whether or not the APP question is going to survive in its current format, I don't know. And I think that I think at some point we as Albertans are just going to have to come together and we're just going to have to say we're declaring independence. Like, we don't need your permission. We don't need a vote. We don't need any of this stuff because we're not going to play around under your rules anymore. We're going to declare independence, and that's going to be it. Now, there are other issues that come along with that, but this idea that we continue as a society to go back to the people who are enslaving us and to think that we're going to get change out of these systems is ridiculous. And I'll give you just an example. During COVID, I sued the Court of Queen's Bench, as it was then, and the Provincial Court of Alberta because they infringed my rights by trying to force mask me in the courthouse. But listen to this, they are the defendants. I was the plaintiff, am the plaintiff. They are the defendants in this case. Who's going to hear the case? The Court of King's Bench. The exact same people that are implementing these policies that are infringing upon my rights and freedoms. So we have a massive problem here. I mean, we have a system that we have a system where people are expecting the very same people who are abusing us and taking advantage of us right now, and we're expecting them to side with us and asking their permission to leave the country of Alberta when we're actually trying to get out from under the Constitution of Canada. It makes absolutely no sense. Yet Danielle Smith has that in the Citizens Initiative Act, empowered the Elections Alberta to send this question to the courts for its constitutional opinion. And here is where we're at. We're going to spend tons of money on it. The question may not even come out the same at the end of the day. And so we have a big problem, even with the Referendum Act, even if it was a government sponsored referendum. She's included in that legislation this notion that Indigenous, they're recognized as, basically a sovereign independent group and have a special status. So there needs to be a giant overhaul here. And unfortunately, I think pain is the touchstone for change. Apparently, Albertans need to be in a little bit more pain before they get motivated to actually make the change that they need.
Professor Pardy. I think there was two issues in there if you want to address. The first one, I know you're a little bit more secular, but it's sort of the religious, spiritual, family component. The second one is, can we vote our way out of this?
Right. So my vision might be a little different than Catherine's in this sense. I don't think it is possible, certainly today, to get a collective vision on anything. And we shouldn't try, because it's not going to happen. Because all you're going to do is you're going to collect up a certain proportion of the population who agree, and the rest will not. And if you adopt that view, then one group is going to be imposing a view on everybody else. And that's a no-no. That's not freedom. So my vision is this: everybody is free to choose for themselves. Those values that Catherine expressed, I have no objection to it at all. None. And I believe that everybody should be living in a country where they can pursue those values for themselves, for their own families, for their own communities, for their own friends. But everybody else can do the same thing too, for their own values, right? So the problem right now is that the government is involved in so many things, everything, that the position that the government adopts is the position. So let's take transgenderism for a minute as an example. If an adult person wants to change or try to change their gender and try to call themselves something else, I think they should be free to do that. They have their own life. They can do it whatever they want. That doesn't mean that the government should pay for it. That doesn't mean the government should provide the services. And it doesn't mean that I'm obliged to go along with the belief. I can respond to that in whatever way I want to, because I have my values and that person has theirs. That's a free society. But because government runs the healthcare system and the school system and this system and that system and taxes us and has a position, that means transgenderism is embraced and approved of. Then you can't speak against it. That's the problem. So if you had an individualistic society where everybody genuinely had the ability to decide for themselves and their own families what they wanted to do, then it wouldn't be a collectivist, coherent society with everybody on the same page. That's true. But you're not going to get that. You're never going to get that now. So we need to be individualistic so that everybody is free to decide their own communities and their own values.
Well, I agree with that, Bruce. I really do. But at the same time, I think where that falls apart is that when we can't agree on what's basically right and wrong,
Yep.
I think, societies benefit from a common understanding that we can all agree that killing other people is wrong,
Oh,
right? I think we
sure.
can all agree that stealing other people's property is wrong. I think that, and those are derived from some sort of moral guidance, right? And so we can't even agree on that anymore as a society
True
between
enough.
what's right and wrong. And so I agree, and I think that, from a Christian perspective, God gave us all free will, and I think that the Christian religion is actually the best at adhering to that and respecting people's free will. The problem I have is that when because we no longer agree anymore, um, there has to be a mechanism where the authority, whatever it is, whether it's through the court or
Mhm.
policing or whatever, is going to step in to protect those
Yes.
where the wrong is being committed. And right now, I have no faith in the institutions to be able to actually decide in favor of what is right according to what I believe to be right. And so it's not. I agree with you on everything, but at some point we need to have an understanding, a common understanding of the difference between right and wrong. And I think it's wrong using the transgender issue. I think that if you're an adult, you go for it, fill your boots, do whatever you want to do. I
Mhm.
don't believe in having this within our school system.
Agreed. Agreed.
And so that's been my line. Like, I will respect you. I have, a friend who's transgender, as well, that I've interviewed before. And I have nothing, and everybody deserves the same quality of respect and dignity as a human being. But I think that we do need to come to an agreement on what is basically right and wrong within our society, so that we're able to function, and we're able to have some comfort in those authorities that are going to, like the courts, like our policing, that are going to be able to say, no, 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 what you did is definitively wrong, and this is the judgment, and this is the punishment.
Right. Right. Yeah. I don't think Catherine and I significantly disagree
Yeah,
about this. I would just describe it differently, but I think in substance it's probably close to the same thing.
yeah,
The way I would put it is, there's in order for everybody to be free, you have to be free from two things. Number one, you have to be free from the coercion of the state, and you have to be free from the coercion of other people. In other words, people can't beat you up, people can't take your stuff, people can't trespass on your land, people have to leave you alone. Okay, so if that's the common understanding, then absolutely, because you got to have that in order for people to be
yeah,
able to decide their own values and so on and so forth. Okay, but what we're describing there is what is minimally necessary for us all to get along in peace and have our own liberties while not interfering with everybody else. And I agree that you've got to have
yeah.
that minimal thing in order for this system to work. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would love to see, a society focused on, personal responsibility and empowering people to be the best versions of themselves. And what does it mean to have a family? And in this world right now, we talk about convenience, and everybody's a victim because of their lived experience and all the rest of it.
Sure.
But I envision a society where it's okay to be disciplined. It's okay to sacrifice for the well-being of your family and for the well-being of the community around you. And those are principles that are rooted in a moral principle and a moral code that I think that we need to have a conversation about, because we're
Right.
we're not we're not making a productive, vibrant, robust community of people anymore. We
Right.
are
Right.
we're birthing people into
Right.
into the slave system that is meaningless, and where government is the sole authority.
Again, I agree. But I would also reframe it in my own terms. I think we're agreeing, but I
I
would put
think
it
we
this
are
way.
too.
Yeah, I would put it this way: the idea of personal responsibility is inevitable. It's an inevitable consequence when the state has no power. In
Yeah.
other words, you have to look after yourself. That's your responsibility, because there is no welfare state to do that for you. So
Exactly.
you look after yourself, you look after your family, because the bureaucrats have no power. This victimization culture is only possible when bureaucrats have power to develop programs and do spending and to champion this cause and that cause. That has to end. And if that is all out, then you have to stand on your own 2 feet. And that's what, to me, personal responsibility means.
Yeah.
I'll jump in really quickly. I always think of it when I was growing up that my parents used to make so many decisions, and now the state is making all the
Yes.
decisions. So
Yes.
power is drifting from the family unit as a form of governance to the state.
Yes. Yes. And quite consciously so. I mean, this is why there's a conflict inside the education system, conflict between the education system and parents, because the people inside the education system genuinely believe that it is their job to protect the children from their parents.
Yeah.
And that cannot stand. That is an expression of the power of the managerial state. And that is what you're going to continue to get in Alberta, even if it becomes independent, unless this path is changed.
Exactly.
So we gotta
No,
go ahead, Kath. I was going to say we have a hard stop at 1 hour, so we got about 10 minutes. Any comments, or if there's something you would advise the Alberta Prosperity Project, like course correct on this is how you should be taking Alberta into the future.
Well, my first two, I mean, there's a set of principles at the bottom of this, and those principles, you can't be fudged, because if you fudge them, then you don't get the thing that you're trying to achieve. But in terms of issues, my favorite two are the issues that potentially cause the most political trouble, and that's the reason why they're important. And those two issues are public health care and Aboriginal rights. For my money, those two things have to be the first things on the chopping block to get rid of in a new Alberta. You cannot have a single payer public healthcare system in a country that claims to be free. Those two things do not go together. So all those people, all those Albertans who want to maybe consider separation as long as you keep the healthcare system, no. Choose one, folks. And if you want to choose public health care, then you just might as well stay where you are. In an independent Alberta, Aboriginal rights should not exist. Why is that? Because in a free country governed by the rule of law, the same legal rights and rules apply to everyone, regardless of who you are, where you're from, who your parents are, what your genes are, what your culture is. Everybody is legally equal treatment under the law. If you don't have that, you don't have a genuinely free country. So these things are not negotiable. If you mean what you say, then those are just the first two examples for me. There's lots more of things that have to change from the way they are in the Alberta as it presently exists.
Catherine?
Yeah, I agree. I think that a shift in focus in terms of presenting a more holistic vision for what Alberta will look like is necessary at this time, and it's going to be necessary to capture people. But whether or not we're going to be able to achieve that, given the polarization that's existing right now within Canada and Alberta specifically, is anybody's guess. But I'm in favor of way smaller government, where there's absolutely no government spending, probably with respect to healthcare. I agree wholeheartedly. Education as well. I want Alberta, a government to get out of our education system. They should be providing defense mechanisms for the new nation, infrastructure mechanisms, and really not, and so like policing as well, right?
Police,
And
courts, and military. And
exactly.
those are the classic 3 exceptions to the idea that the state should be powerless. Those 3 things are legitimate state functions. Otherwise, there's not much else.
Yeah. In terms, make sure the roads are properly maintained and what little government infrastructure there needs to be because of the paring down of these programs, the better. And because it's not sustainable. I mean, the trajectory of where we're going from an economic standpoint is not sustainable, and we need to start empowering people to, to be their own boss, to take personal responsibility, and so getting government out of as many things as possible is my preferred route. Now, the reality in Alberta, though, is that most people, if you consider my perspective a conservative perspective, most people, even the people who think that they're conservative, are not conservative. So we have a long way to go in terms of what this looks like. And I would hope, I guess, what I would implore people to really consider is recognizing the roadblocks that are already being put up under the guise of supposedly Smith secretly supporting Alberta independence by allowing Elections Alberta to refer the case to the court right off the giddy up to stall this process. Is to, if APP wants to focus on the question only, focus on the question only. Don't wade into these other things unless you're prepared to have an inclusive, to use a word from the left, an inclusive conversation about that with people who really do want to see a better Alberta, and I think that we have the opportunity here, but we're not going to get it if we continue down the path that we're on in the trajectory of the message that APP is providing right now.
All right, well, there you have it. I kind of wish you both were involved with the Alberta Prosperity Project. It's we'll see what happens, and we'll hope for the best. Professor Pardy, Ms. Kowalchuk, thank you very much for coming on. And
it's been a pleasure.
Thank you to the audience.
Thank you very much for
Thanks,
having me.
Payman. Bruce, nice to see you again.
You too, Catherine. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Bye.